Soon, it had a new name, the petrodollar.
Your currency is only as strong as the demand for it, just like anything else, the supply and demand. Why the petrodollar is important, it causes a demand for the US dollar. A lot of Americans don't realize that over 70% of all the $100 bills in the world are actually outside of the US. There's more $100 bills in Russia than there are in America.
This stockpile of US dollars in countries around the world is because oil is bought and sold using the greenback.
If oil starts trading in non-petrodollars, such as gold or a basket of currencies, or if China and Russia start trading in yuan and ruble rather than US dollars, that demand isn't there. And the way of life for the average American will be done. It will be worse than the Great Depression.
To date, anyone who's potentially threatened the status of the petrodollar hasn't fared well. Libyan strongman Muammar Gaddafi publicly pushed for a Pan-African gold-backed currency that he would trade for Libya's oil. He was killed during a US-backed revolution in 2011. And just a few short years before, Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein advocated selling oil for euros.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq.
The US invaded under the guise of looking for WMDs.
Iraq did not have any weapons of mass destruction. And interestingly enough, after the Americans invaded, took over, put in their own government, the whole concept of selling oil in euros never surfaced again.
Today, many countries resent the current petrodollar system. Their leading spokesperson is none other than Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Americans should be very worried about what Putin can do. There is a new Cold War going on. It is the colder war. That is exactly what's going on. And who's in the center of this push? Vladimir Putin. And the petrodollar is so crucial to the colder war. The only thing holding America right now at the top is the petrodollar. And let me make it very clear. If the petrodollar dies, so does America as a superpower.
So we're going to go to break here, and I'm going to come back and play some of these clips. Owen has got a lot to cover as well today. Owen, take us out and tell us some of what you got coming up today.
Well, Alex, the news is breaking in such rapid fashion now. Just since we've been on air, two big news stories developing with the failed attempt by Jake Sullivan to get diplomacy with China and Saudi Arabia. Now China and Saudi Arabia are discussing switching to the yuan to make international purchases, specifically with gas and oil, instead of the U.S. dollar. I mean, you want to talk about the U.S. collapsing? Folks, our lifestyle of prosperity and having a house with 2 stories and a pool in the backyard and having barbecues on the weekend, gone if that happens. Forget about it. And now Zelensky has come out and said Ukraine has no plans to join NATO. So the cogs are starting to click here, and it looks like, for the most part, the West with Biden and Harris are the ones kind of being pushed back into submission, and now the struggle with Putin and Ukraine is going to become the real issue. But it appears that the latest developments are that Biden, Harris, sit down, shut up, or America's going to be crushed in all of this.
That is exactly what's happening. And in fact, I wanted to get into that. I'm glad you just brought that up. We'll cover that when we come back, because even the London Guardian points out these oil sanctions on Europe will bankrupt them and cause a Great Depression, and already are. And it's not hurting the Russians. They'll just make more money where they do sell the oil. And then again, there's darker globalist forces manipulating this whole thing to collapse civilization. It's the info war. Stay with us.
The Wall Street Journal reported that Saudi Arabia is considering accepting Chinese currency rather than U.S. dollars for its oil sales to China. Now, why is that a big deal? Seems like some little financial story. Well, because it would spell the end of the petrodollar. The petrodollar is one of the keys to the United States' wealth. Saudi Arabia has traded oil exclusively in US dollars for nearly half a century, and that is one of the key reasons the United States has the highest living standard of any big country in the world, despite the fact that our manufacturing sector long ago collapsed. You may have wondered how that worked. Why are we still so rich? Well, this is how. Petrodollars allow our government, in short, to spend money that we don't have, and that money pays for an awful lot of what we have. Healthcare, retirements, the military, we could go on, everything, essentially. As economist Gal Luft put it in an interview with the Wall Street Journal today, quote, the oil market, and by extension the entire global commodities market, is the insurance policy of the status of the dollar as the reserve currency. If that block is taken out of the wall will begin to collapse. What's the wall? Well, it's the U.S. economy. Not a small story, maybe even a bigger story than the invasion of Ukraine. Weird that we're not talking about it.
In 1913, Woodrow Wilson agreed to the Federal Reserve Act. Nelson Aldrich, a senator, and Paul Warburg and a few of the Jewish families of Europe with Gentiles took over the monetary policies of the United States. In 1917, America got involved in the First World War. In order to fight that war, America had to borrow money, and that's when the debt started. Because when she borrowed money, she had to borrow it from somewhere. Federal Reserve had money printed, you borrow it, you pay the expenditures of war, and all you bought was paper, but this paper has interest attached to it, even though it's based on nothing. Just try to follow me. Don't go to sleep. You've been asleep for 400 years. It's time to wake up today. Now look. After World War I, the debt started climbing. They wanted to draw America into World War II. That was a European thing. Hitler and the boys. But in order for America to get involved in World War II in Europe, she had to borrow more money. The debt started escalating. Then Japan attacked. America borrowed more money. And the more money she borrowed, in 1933, America went off the gold standard. So there was nothing after 1933 to back this. So after that was nothing. And in 1971, it was completed. No more gold. And in the 70s, you could buy an ounce of gold for $35 an ounce. And I was with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad one day, and he pulled out a gold coin and put it on the table. And he said, in the future, this would be the medium of exchange. Because the paper will lose its value. Now I want to quickly show how the debt has climbed. After World War II, the Korean War. Every time America went to war, she had to borrow money. There was a time when America would borrow money from her own citizens. We used to buy war bonds. We used to buy treasury bonds and securities that we would keep in a safe for our children. And they would say in 5 years or in 10 years, you can cash this bond in and you will get this plus interest. You remember that? But today, 52% of America's burgeoning debt is owned by foreign governments. So it ain't no more that we could sell bonds to our citizens. We sell bonds to China. We sell bonds and securities to Japan. We sell bonds and securities to Great Britain. Let me show you who owes what. This kind of stuff is classroom stuff. But every time you come to this house, it'll be a classroom. Look, according to this pie graph, intragovernmental debt, $3,794 billion. The publicly held debt, which is still government responsibility, $2,674 billion. But the publicly held foreigners' debt, rather that America owes, is $2,240 billion. The Japanese have bought up $649 billion of American bonds and securities, plus they have $1.2 trillion in foreign currency reserves. The largest currency reserves in the world is in China. You see why America would jump on Cuba, a communist country 90 miles away, and talk sweet to China, a communist country? Because China got America by the testicles. I use that language because every male in here knows how painful that is. The Chinese in bonds and securities, $354 billion. The British, $249 billion. OPEC, that's the oil producing countries, $102 billion. Korea, $66 billion. Taiwan, $63 billion. The Caribbean banks, $63 billion. Germany, $56 billion. Hong Kong, $55 billion. Brazilians, $54 billion. Canadians, $49 billion. Luxembourg, $38 billion. Mexico, $36 billion. The French, $31 billion. Singapore, $29 billion. Swiss, $27 billion. The Turks, $24 billion. The Swedes, $19 billion. The Irish, $19 billion. The Dutch, $18 billion. The Thais, $17 billion. The Israelis, $17 billion. The Belgians, $15 billion. The Indians, $15 billion. The Italians, $14 billion. The Poles, $13 billion. And all others, $148 billion. Now, when you go and turn on the news and you find out that China has some American ports, you say, well, how did that happen? Come on. The Arabs got so much and so much. The Chinese got. Well, I read that even on I-90, that's right, on the toll booth area, that has been sold to Spain. Wait. When America owes all this money all over the world, she's the largest borrower of all the nations in the earth, almost combined. Look at this now. When you owe owe a lot of money, sometimes in order to get some money back to pay your liabilities, you sell off your assets. Look, family, I just want to come straight to you. The aggregate wealth or worth of 3,000 by 2,000 miles, continental United States of America, is $41 to $50 trillion. All the federal buildings that are in America and all over the world are 1.26 trillion. Now, all these people that America owes, suppose they say, well, wait a minute, America not doing too good. We want to call the debt.
China already has the world's largest armed forces, over 2 million strong. But it's a new breed of super-fast missiles designed to evade American nuclear defenses that has the Pentagon deeply concerned.
What we saw was a very significant event of a test of a hypersonic weapon system, and it is very concerning.
Speaking to Bloomberg, General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, sounding the alarm.
I don't know if it's quite a Sputnik moment, but I think it's very close to that. And it has all of our attention.
It's the most significant public acknowledgement by a senior U.S. official that China conducted 2 tests of a hypersonic missile system this summer. Tests which were first reported by the Financial Times. The fear now that one day they may be capable of carrying a nuclear payload. Supersonic jets and missiles have been in use for decades, able to break the speed of sound. Hypersonic is a whole different league, at least 5 times faster, traveling around 4,000 miles per hour at a minimum, making a hypersonic missile quick and agile enough to evade existing U.S. defense systems. China has only acknowledged one test, saying it was linked to the nation's space program. But President Xi Jinping, according to China's official news agency, called for the Chinese military to break new ground and said China's capabilities have been enhanced by leapfrog development in equipment and weapons.
Chinese President Xi's intentions have been accelerating as the New World Order advances its global agenda.
President Xi Jinping, as you said, had warned in this speech that any foreign force attempting to bully China would, quote, find themselves on a collision course with a great wall of steel forged by China's 1.4 billion people. Now, his tough talk matched the show of force that we saw today. A lot of military hardware at this event, which featured a fly past of military choppers and China's own stealth fighter, the J-20. President Xi also pledged that China would build up its military. He reiterated the commitments that the country has to the reunification of Taiwan and stability of Hong Kong.
The analysis of Jeffrey Lewis of the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies has identified the construction of 119 new intercontinental ballistic missile silos in the deserts of northwestern China, bringing the total amount of silos under construction to 145, intended for the latest massive DF-41 ICBMs. The DF-41s can reportedly carry up to 10 warheads.
Some key statistics. China's Navy is the biggest in the world. Its Army, the largest by far. The report alleges that China is looking to expand by building bases around the world, and it says that it has 200 nuclear warheads and wants to double that number in a decade.
As WorldNet Daily reported, Peter Husey of the Mitchell Institute has pointed out, just this deployment alone will provide China over 1,000 new on-alert warheads, 1,450, almost double the day-to-day USA on-alert force, and by itself a nuclear force roughly equal to the entire current U.S. nuclear deployed force of 1,490 sea and land-based missile warheads. The response of the Biden State Department didn't exactly breed confidence.
To follow up on the Joby Warwick report in the Washington Post, about 100 missile silos being detected, which would be an extraordinary number. These reports and other developments suggest that the PRC's nuclear arsenal will grow more quickly and to a higher level than perhaps previously anticipated. This buildup, it is concerning. It raises questions about the PRC's intent, and for us, it reinforces the importance of pursuing practical measures to reduce nuclear risks. Despite what appears to be PRC obfuscation, this rapid buildup has become more difficult to hide, and it highlights how the PRC appears, again, to be deviating from decades of nuclear strategy based around minimum deterrence.
Nor does the response by President Biden himself.
China will confront China's economic abuses, counter its aggressive, coercive action to push back on China's attack on human rights, intellectual property, and global governance. But we are ready to work with Beijing when it's in America's interest to do so.
Rather, these responses resemble submission. John Bound reporting.
And I want you to pay very strict attention to every word. I have chosen as a subject today the divine destruction of America. Can she avert it? America is the greatest nation on this earth and the greatest nation in the last 6,000 years. But America and her people, which includes you, face divine destruction. The question is, can she avert it? In the Holy Quran, in the 7th surah or chapter, in the 34th verse, it reads, "And every nation has a term. So when its term comes, they cannot remain behind the least while, nor can they precede it." If every nation has a term, does America have a term? And if so, what is the time? A term is a time or period to which something lasts. It is a period of time to which limits have been set. Conditions or stipulations limiting what is proposed to be granted or done. So if every nation has a time to which some limits have been set, what time is it for America? And what limits have been set?